you wouldn't believe it, but the All Blacks' first squad of the year is being named in about 6 weeks' time, just after the Super Rugby finals. So we're starting to look at who will actually make this first squad of Scott Robertson. And we're talking midfield today. Let's take a look at who the contenders are. 4 midfielders went to the Rugby World Cup in France last year. Do the same 4 get picked? And those 4, of course, we're talking about Rieko Ioane, Anton Lienert-Brown, David Havili, Jordie Barrett. I mean, who are those 4 in? Are they automatic selections?
Yes, I'm picking 5, actually, and I'll explain myself. So I'm going Ioane, Anton Lienert-Brown, Jordie, and Jordie because he covers fullback, because I'm only taking 3 fullbacks, because 2 of those can cover other positions. Proctor and Havili. And Havili is you'd normally take an outside back that might cover a few positions, but Havili covers 10, 12, 13 and fullback at a pinch. So I'm actually taking 5, but I must say, and I've already said this last week, that puts Love, Barrett and Barrett as our fullback cover, and McKenzie. We don't need fullbacks, I don't reckon. And we'll have the wing discussion at another time, Mel. So yeah, I'm taking 5.
So you're taking 5, and Billy Proctor is your big mover of 2024. Yeah,
I think he's just been really, really good. Just very, very good. He also covers 12. So he can sort of play that. It's between him and Tupai, I think, but Proctor's a little bit more in form at the moment, I believe.
I think Proctor's probably your out-and-out centre. Proctor, for me, I agree with what sort of JK's mentioning. I think he gets in there. I really have liked his form, not just this year, but sort of even the last couple of years. You know, the fact that he understands his role. I'm not too sure if he's moved into second 5 before, but I think him and Ioane would probably be in my mind, are probably our centres. The other guys can move around a little bit, you know, second 5 centre. The biggest thing for me that we haven't, once we get to looking at the wingers, is who covers wing, centre, and that's probably where, and I'm probably more looking like a, you know, Lester Fainga'anuku type of player to cover that sort of side. That's what we haven't got right now. But I think I definitely agree with that. It's Lienert-Brown,
you're taking
Barrett,
5 as well.
Ioane, Havili, and Proctor.
Rieko Ioane
covers wing.
Well,
You're saying he's the Lester.
He's the Lester Fainga'anuku for me. I mean, some really, really good players in really good form are going to miss out in the first squad of the year, unless they decide to extend it out a little bit, which they've been known to do in the past, and all of a sudden 32 becomes 34, 36 because they need to look at some guys. He's going to need to look at some guys because they haven't had the benefit of a number of camps that they've had in the past. I know they've had some leadership catch-ups, but they haven't had these in-season camps as much. So I look at it and go, maybe they extend it out. You talk a lot about specialists, but all of a sudden you've got a whole lot of players that play a whole lot of positions. So I'm a little bit confused by your, you know, David Havili covers here, and I've got 4 first 5. Yeah, but I'm just confused about the fact that do we not want to? I mean, if you've got David Havili in the squad, who we know his skill set, who's now being asked to play 10 for the Crusaders, and so you look at his skill set and you're going, well, how does that fit? Where does he fit at first 5s? Like 3? Is he a 3rd of first 5, 4th first 5, 4th fullback, 5th, 3rd of... So I'm not sure it may be necessary, you know. So I think probably David's got a little bit of work to do in regards to if some other guys continue their really good form. When you've got a specialist like Timmy, like a Quinn Tupai, who when you look at someone who has been direct, who's carried well, who's done all the fundamental things that he did before he was an All Black, he's doing those things again.
Well, before his ACL injury, he was the starting midfielder for the All Blacks, remember?
Yeah, but Jordie Barrett
was playing fullback.
Jordie Barrett was playing fullback. The whole landscape changed the moment the All Blacks picked Jordie Barrett.
I think what I think about, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I probably do actually, because I think you need specialists. You need specialists in those positions. I like specialists. So if you go a specialist fullback, you go Love, right? And Barrett, is he our specialist fullback now? Then after that, you can go Jordie, right? If you go centre, you go Rieko, and then you go Anton Lienert-Brown at 12. They're specialists, but then after that, you can go Havili as a 12-13 cover, right? So I sort of agree, but I disagree. I think you go, if you look at your top 25, you go, I'm taking specialist or someone like Jordie. But then after that, you go, well, if I look at my bench, what am I going to do? You know, Damien McKenzie has always suffered from being, he's our fullback 10 cover, so he's on the bench. But now he's our 10. What are you going to do on the bench? Do you take Havili and then take an extra loose forward? Playing South Africa, do we go, okay, Havili can cover 10, 12, 13 and 15, so we'll take a halfback and him, and 5, 6 forwards, whatever it is.
Well, that's going to come down to the split, right? And that's what you're talking about before. They originally named 32, or they say they're going to name 32, but then they blow it out to 52, right? And given the injuries that some guys,
yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. And so, but I think it comes back to that. You've obviously got 2 guys that are going to be there. And in my mind, it's obviously Geordie Barrett and Ioane. They are the incumbents. But who fits in underneath that? And I think Proctor deserves that. I think he should be there thereabouts. It should. You throw him in there with a Barrett, I think they would work really well together because he's a similar type of player. But they said it's who plays wing and that sort of that physical guy. Tupai McLeod, he might be able to shift around a little bit. So the makeup will all depend on how much you're going to get named.
Can I just throw this into the middle? The year after the World Cup, the NZR and the finance people get really tough on numbers. Bit different World Cup year, but normally after the World Cup, they get way more strict on you're having 35 players and that's it because they want to
pay for it.
Yeah, you've got to pay for it. So it's not like World Cup year, and I think
any business does that, don't they? After the World Cup, right tight on numbers, man.
Yeah, but I do think that'll go. We're not going to blow out to 38 players. I think it'll be whatever they say, and they'll have to, which will help my argument.
Everything helps your argument.
Thank you.
Well, where does Richie Mo'unga fit into this conversation? He's the man that has been talked about so much this season. We haven't really heard from him because he's been playing over in Japan. But the latest news from New Zealand Rugby, from the head of professional rugby, Chris Lendrum, is they want to bring him home early and get him out of his 3-year contract with Toshiba, which is worth, so we're hearing, multi-millions every year. How do we afford him? Does he want to come home? And if we're trying to bring him home early, why did we ever let him go?
Money's gone, mate. You've just spoken about getting tight on money. Where are they going to get? Where are they going to?
Money.
Well, they're going to cut the NPC. You said that in the same conversation.
Yeah, we're cutting the number of teams.
Cutting the number of professional athletes. That's another discussion for another evening. Look, I think it'll depend on this year. I think it depends on 2 things. Richie, if he's enjoying Japan, the lifestyle's good, he's spending more time with his family, he might just go, I'm out. How old is he? 29, right? Who knows? I think the second thing is what happens this year. If we still need Richie Mo'unga by the end of the year, then you start going, we're going to go and pay for him.
Should we have ever let him go?
I think he wanted to go, didn't he? Was it all about us? Or
Well, he wanted to set his family up. That's something that he's been very clear on. He wanted to go to Japan, 1, to have an experience, but 2, to set his family up.
Yeah,
and he thought he could do that in Japan
home,
and not in New Zealand.
So he won't come home. What is it, a couple of $1 million a year? He might be spending time with his family. So if they get him out of the last year, I'd say it'd be a little bit like what we've been doing to keep hold of Bodie, right? So in the last year of his contract to get him back for World Cup, it might be a sabbatical, he comes back late, that sort of stuff.
Do you genuinely think we need him, Mills?
Well, he's a special player, first and foremost, right? And do you think he's going to make a difference if he was back in that Crusaders outfit? Do you think he'd make a difference back in the All Blacks? I think he's probably been brought up in terms of the conversation because how light we actually are. Pedal Feta, in that case, it probably, being injured probably hasn't helped because you would have wanted him to grow a little. Damien McKenzie, who backs up Damien McKenzie? And we've got Barrett and sort of coming back as well. Do we need him? I think there's an element that we do. Have we got the money to do it? And back to your point, should we have let him go? Financially, could we have actually put something in front of him to perhaps, tie him into staying maybe another year rather than, the whole big plan of signing him for 3 years for the next Rugby World Cup? That might have been a little bit...
I actually don't disagree, Mills. I think if you're going to let him go now and try and get him back at the end, because at least he's gone. You try and keep him here, he's going to compromise. He's got $2 million over there. You keep him for $1 million, 1.2, right? Where he's going to go and get his couple of million, and then all of a sudden, at the end of 2 years, he might be going, oh, OK, I've done pretty well. I've had time with the family. I've still got the hunger, because that's what it needs to be. The hunger to win a World Cup in the All Black jersey to go down as a great.
There's always the danger when you break a ceiling and when you start paying up there because expectations for other players change as well. And then the demand and the pressure that comes on your ability to play those players. So you go through that ceiling and that's where you would have had to go to keep Richie Mo'unga. You would have had to, you know, and
we
my
can't
understanding
afford it
was
right
that.
at the
But
moment.
my understanding was, though, is the fact that maybe they didn't get the opportunity they would have liked New Zealand Rugby to push it a little bit further, to push the boat out a little bit further to keep him. But to me, it's done. The decision's been made. It's up to him now.
Yeah.
If he wants to come home, he should come home. If he wants to carry on playing, we push on with what we've got, who are here, who are committed, who are all in for not just their Super Rugby franchises, they're all in for the All Blacks. And if you talk to those guys who were part of the campaign last year, who missed out on winning a Rugby World Cup by 1 point, they're highly motivated.
Yeah.
That group already.
You
So
think
for me,
Chris Leedrum coming out like that, because this is no one else. This is NZR saying, we would like to see him back. Do you see them saying there's movement in that ceiling and this is what we wanted to present him? Because no one else is saying Richie Mo'unga should come back. NZR is saying that, not us. So the fact that they've come out and saying that, they're obviously wanting to put something forth in front of them to hope that he comes back.
And if you're Scott Robertson, clearly you'd like to have him available to you, wouldn't you? You'd love to have him. And whether or not they're starting to just think long term, to your point, JK, going, you know what, maybe we can get him for a World Cup year. We get him to commit to coming back to New Zealand. Maybe that's the long term.
Well, this is a discussion for another night, right?
Yeah.
Another discussion for another night, but our leadership's in disarray. We don't know what's going on with the board, right? It's post-World Cup. Losing the World Cup would have cost us financially, for sure. There's been the Silver Lake deal, and now there needs to be a consolidation. That's probably why they couldn't afford to keep Mo'unga, because they can't afford to break that ceiling. Because like you say, you break that ceiling, all of a sudden your 8 best All Blacks are now going to that ceiling. So I think this is a period where there's a lot of change coming, but we should have settled by next year, have way more better financial results, and then hopefully we're starting to heading towards keeping our players because we've got a bigger ceiling.